Welcome, everybody, to today's discussion of Workbook lessons in A Course in Miracles. Today, we'll pick up where we left off last week, Lesson 58, the second one. But before we do so, let's take a moment to quiet and center our minds, followed by a prayer. Let's start by closing our eyes if you want to. Allow your breath to settle in a comfortable pattern, breathing in and out, gently and quietly. In and out. At your own comfortable pace. Direct your attention towards the empty, receptive expanse that is your mind. Simply be in that place of peace within. When thoughts seem to pop up out of nowhere, do not dwell on them, but watch them move past, leaving your mind receptive and ready to receive the Holy Spirit's inspiration. Peace to our mind. Let all our thoughts be still. We have come here in the name of Jesus, who has promised that when two or more are gathered in his name, in the name of love, he will be there with them. And so we trust that he is here with us. I'd like to read lesson 315 as our opening prayer. Each day, 1,000 treasures come to me with every passing moment. I am blessed with gifts throughout the day, in value far beyond. A brother smiles upon another, and my heart is gladdened. Someone speaks a word of gratitude or mercy, and my mind receives this gift and takes it as its own. And everyone who finds the way to God becomes my savior, pointing out the way to me and giving me his certainty that what he learned is surely mine as well. I thank you, Father, for the many gifts that come to me today and every day from every Son of God. My brothers are unlimited in all their gifts to me. Now may I offer them my thankfulness, that gratitude to them may lead me on to my Creator and his memory. Amen. Now let's bring our focus back to our presence here together in this shared space. Today, we start with lesson 58.2. And I see that a couple new people have joined. Welcome, Megan. This session is being recorded, Megan, and by staying on the call, you give permission to the foundation to use the recording for their outreach on social media, if that's okay with you. All right. I'll share screen. And so you can all see the lesson that we left off on last week. The last lesson we did last week was 1, my holiness envelops everything I see. I'll quickly read through the remaining lessons of this review lesson, and then we can look at the 4 remaining ones individually. 2, my holiness blesses the world. 3, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. 4, my holiness is my salvation. 5, I am blessed as a son of God. Okay. I'm going to call on various people to read for us and share their thoughts. When I'm sharing screen, it's difficult for me to see all the individual rectangles. So I'll just call on somebody. And if you don't feel like reading, I'll call someone else. Don't feel bad about it. Juan, would you read, please, number 2?
Sure. Number 2, my holiness blesses the world. The perception of my holiness does not bless me alone. Everyone and everything I see in its light shares in the joy it brings to me. There is nothing that is apart from this joy, because there is nothing that does not share my holiness. Free.
Sure. Could you repeat from line 4, because you were freezing.
Okay, line
from 4.
There is nothing that is apart from this joy, because there is nothing that does not share my holiness. As I recognize my holiness, so does the holiness of the world shine forth for everyone to see.
Would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Yes, as I read this lesson, I'm reminded that in this context, holiness and wholeness mean the same thing. I'm holy because I'm whole, and my wholeness makes me holy. So when I substitute wholeness for holiness, I get it works for me. So that's
right. Yeah. Robert, would you like to add?
Yes, I would like to add. I like that. A lot of times, another thing I do is with the distinction between level 1 and level 2, the difference between knowledge and perception and so on, that I focus on the meaning of holiness as being holy, which means being a part of God, that I am part of God, like the one lesson says, my mind is part of God's, I am very holy. So the whole idea of being a part of God or being of God is the notion of holiness. And then at level 2, holiness takes on a reflection of that, but it's sort of like the opposite of sinfulness. Like we start off being holy and then not holy, which is sinful. And then the whole idea of forgiveness is we let go of the notion of being sinful and accept that we're sinless. And that sinlessness reflects the holiness that we have as God created us. But it is a level 2 holiness. Sinlessness is meaningless in heaven, in reality. But sinlessness is very meaningful here because it's a correction of our belief that we're sinful in separating from God and so on and so forth. So I use that notion a lot, that distinction in holiness. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for adding that. That's very helpful. Yeah. So connecting holiness here in this world that we think we live in with sinlessness. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The reflection of the wholeness that is in heaven. Yeah.
Yes.
Would anybody else? I'm just repeating to make sure I got what you said. Anybody else would like to add? Okay. I'll share screen again, and then we can move on to the next one. Ardith, would you like to read number 3, please?
Yeah, number 3, sure. There is nothing my holiness cannot do. My holiness is unlimited in its power to heal because it is unlimited in its power to save. What is there to be saved from except illusions? And what are all illusions except false ideas about myself? My holiness undoes them all by asserting the truth about me. In the presence of my holiness, which I share with God Himself, all idols vanish.
Any thoughts, Ardith?
Yes, but I'd rather hear somebody else's right now. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah. Let me see if I see any hands. Okay, I don't see any hands, so I'll add something that I was thinking about. When I see the word holy and holiness, immediately what comes to mind is purity, pureness, purity. And in this lesson, there's nothing my purity cannot do. And, my purity is really an oxymoron because, there's nothing pure about me, the little me. So it's the self with a capital S that's pure because it's love. And if love has only a smidgen of fear in it, it's no longer love. So love is always pure. And joy is always pure. And peace and freedom are always pure. And so when I read this, nothing my holiness cannot do, there's nothing my purity cannot do, my love cannot do, my joy cannot do, my peace cannot, that lifts me up to think of in those terms. I see a hand. Derek, would you like to add?
Yeah, what I was kind of thinking is that when I first think of there's nothing my holiness cannot do, I remember getting frustrated, just thinking of, holiness is so powerful, or God is so powerful, or Jesus, or even John of God down in Brazil, pick your person, that performs miracles, yet there's so many, people that, the miracles don't happen, the illness doesn't heal, yada, yada, yada. And what I'm just realizing right now is that holiness is infinitely powerful, but any one of us, if we decide we don't want to let that power in, it could heal and will heal anything in one's mind if one lets it. But if any of us, to whatever degree, don't let it, then that's why I'm seeing this in myself, and I think in the world. It's not that the holiness doesn't have that power. It's that our ego minds have the power to block it in the dream, in our experience. So I was just trying to clarify that for myself. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. That's true. And, the world we see is a reflection of the content of our mind. So if we block it, if we allow the ego mind to block it in our experience, we'll see images that reflect that decision. Is that what you were saying?
Thank you for articulating that. That brings it even clearer.
Okay, yeah. Ardith, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah. I want to just say what you said earlier. I really resonate with that, and also what Derek just said. And for me, the key now I realize here is in the sentences, and what are all illusions except false ideas about myself? My holiness undoes them all by asserting the truth about me. So I guess it boils down to, for me, to recognize what is that truth. And it's almost a moment-to-moment recognition. And it's not necessarily, I don't think that I'm always not wanting to do that. Sometimes I'm adult. I just don't get it. I'm not paying attention. I've got myself scattered in the world. And I think bringing it back to quiet, to remember, this is just a false idea about me. And as soon as I do that, my holiness undoes them all by asserting that truth. That's kind of big for me, actually, thinking of that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a conscious decision. Huh?
Yes.
Choose again. Yeah, thank you for adding that. Maggie.
Yeah, Ardith, I was kind of, I think, on a similar thought in my own mind. I was just thinking about the sentence before that, even too. Sentence 3 is, what is there to be saved from except illusions? And then it says, what are all illusions except false ideas about myself? And that simplicity of just, there's nothing to be saved from except for the false idea about myself. And like Derek was just saying, it really is just a matter of, will I stop subscribing to that ego thought system and let that truth of me be? Because it really is, that's the only thing that we're being asked to do. And I just feel it's said so succinctly here. I'm appreciating that.
Thank you for adding that, Maggie. Megan, go ahead.
Oh, Me. Okay. I have to keep reminding myself that that the separation itself is what I've done, so that when I acknowledge that I've separated, I can also acknowledge that, or I can also choose to not separate. I can choose to join, say that I'm not separated. And when I get confused, that seems to help me bring myself back down to forgiving myself for all the illusory things that I think, and also accepting that I am totally holy because I am not separate from God. But when I get confused, it usually is surrounding that, no, God is there and I am here. And that seems to, that whole thing that I name God and my name is not God, seems to confuse me a great deal. So when I keep trying to join them, it's not like me and God, but it's just, we're in the same place. So I think one of the biggest, I don't know exactly if I'm getting off topic here, but one of the biggest things I have is with pain, and realizing that pain is illusion as well. And that it's a very sort of like a, punch to your physical self in this world to say, okay, I don't believe that pain is real, because some part of me is accepting it. And therefore, if I release my hold on my ego and say, the ego is the one that's holding me to this pain. And if I accept God and release my my ego and join with God, then the pain can resolve, or I can see it in a different perspective, so that it has the ability to reduce until it's gone. And that's been my experience. And I've been challenging it myself over and over again, because it's really important for me right now. Mm-hmm. But that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for sharing that, Megan. We've talked about pain quite a bit over the past weeks. And so it's something that a lot of people can relate to. So thank you for bringing that up. Does anyone would like to add to or respond? Robert and then Maggie. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, I just want to affirm Megan's whole idea that she is presenting there about that sequence of the relationship between being one with God or not being separate and so forth. And then finally getting to pain. And of course, that reminds me of the statement in the Course about if God is real, there is no pain. Now that's easy enough to understand about reality at the level one, at the spiritual level of experience. But as Megan's pointing out, and I'm the same way, I agree with her, we need to work with that. What's going on when I'm experiencing pain? And at this point, I've got to the experience and the realization that if God is real, there is no pain. It's when God is real to me, when the idea of God is in my mind, and that I'm one with that that's what I am. At those moments, the pain does go away. It's a matter of whether I can hold to that and how well I can hold. But that does lead to another idea that I think Juan has brought up in the past, and maybe even Andrew, that I don't have to suffer because of the pain. I think of suffering in etymologically, it means brought below the threshold of happiness. That's suffering. And I don't have to suffer because there's pain. In a way, I can, actually have that and vacillate between God's presence and the pain's presence and still not suffer in the meantime. I thought I'd share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Maggie and then Derek.
Yes, we have talked a lot about this lately. So you're joining us just right in the same wavelength that we've all been on. And am I gathering correctly? Is it Megan, not Megan?
Oh, you're muted. You're muted, sorry.
Yes, it's Megan. That's why I capitalized the second letter, just so.
Sorry.
Yeah, so phonetically, well, I noticed that if I don't do that, then it always turns to Megan. So you guys might actually want to know how to say my name. Okay, yes, it's Megan.
Okay,
Megan.
yeah. I thought I caught that. And then I almost wondered too if it was a thing that you choose. Like sometimes people have kind of given themselves their own names at this point based on their practice even. But Megan, I did just want to share with you that like Johanna said, that we've been very much talking about this a lot lately. And while you were talking, I just couldn't help but think about what today's workbook lesson is. If you're following along from January 1st, today is one that really speaks directly to this. Sickness is a defense against the truth. And I was sharing just recently, gosh, it might have been last week or 2 weeks ago now. I can't even remember, but I was sharing about how it's a bit of tough medicine sometimes to read that lesson or other quotations from the Course when you are actually experiencing sickness and pain. But I know for me, as I was reading it this morning and doing my practice with it this morning, I was really feeling the truth to it, though, about how it really is, in my experience at least, it's a reaction. It's like a reaction to getting too close to truth. This experience of, but no, you're in pain, so you're still a body, and feeling so connected to the body through the pain. So I just was really thinking about that and feeling that while I was listening to you. So welcome to the group.
Thank you, Maggie. Derek, and then Megan has her hand up, an artist. So Derek, Megan, artist. Go ahead.
Megan, did you want to respond directly back to Maggie?
That'd be great. Thanks. That's why I raised my hand. I have been the big thing is that I'm reluctant to say, but I'll say it for the group here, that I am disabled. Doesn't mean I'm not capable. It doesn't mean I don't have things. So a lot of my coursework was targeted after the first year of doing the course. I was like going, okay, now it even says in the Bible, like, ask for what you want, you'll get it. So I have been able to like take that, satin out of a silk sow's ear or something like that, and really test. It's one thing to have no pain and go, when it comes to you, go, okay, I believe the Course. It's another thing to have pain that's almost constant. And then you get to play with that pain and say, okay, saying this word, does that help the pain go away? Thinking this way, does that help the pain reduce? Just knowing that, just not worrying about it so much, because you realize it is partly your manifestation, you're creating it. Does that help it reduce? So I've been able to like look at it from all different angles. And I always suggest that everybody do this when they're in pain, to really, really, if you're in pain, go ahead and tap that sucker really hard and say, okay, let's see what we can do with this pain by looking at how the Course looks at it. And then just really allow yourself to embody all the ideas and see if it helps. Don't expect it, just help. See, I wonder if this helps me. And I found out that it really does. And one of the things I've been doing, because I am doing the Course daily, so I'm up with you, Maggie, on the date. So I found one of the things that's been helping me is that when I go walking, I found just one of the Course things is I am spirit. And I realized when I say I'm spirit in my head, all of a sudden my head extends, I get taller, and I stop feeling so pulled down by gravity. And all of a sudden the pain just lifts. And so I always ask people to please find something that when you say it in any way, it helps you ease, and then stick with that until it stops working. But it's always a nice thing. So thank you so much, Maggie. I really appreciated your share there.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you, Derek, for asking her. That was it. That was good. And then Derek, would you like to respond to that? Or Maggie, perhaps, Maggie, would you like to respond to Megan?
Just lots of love. I appreciate that. And I think there's a reason you said those words to me just now. So thank you for those suggestions.
Thank you, Maggie. Derek.
Yeah, Megan, thank you for saying that, because that was something I needed to hear, because I deal with chronic pains, fibromyalgia, body pain, and some other stuff. And I've it's interesting what Maggie said about you start getting too close to the light and the body, the ego goes, oh geez, I better do something. This is, the first time I was really getting committed into the course, after about 16 years, I was doing it intensely for 2 years. And then I had a psychotic break, which took me out of life completely for 2 years. So there was no course, but there was no nothing. It was just coping. And then when the psychotic stuff stopped, which also seemed miraculous, I went right back to the course, even doubly more committed. And I had my little timer going off every 8 minutes. And then I was not preoccupied with work. I would stop what I was doing and I would take my minute to think of, I was just back with really wanting it. And then after about 4 months of that level of commitment, I guess my ego or some level goes, oh, geez, we didn't get him the first time with that psychotic break. So then fibromyalgia really became a problem. And it's been so fatiguingly and acutely at times painful that I have not done what you just suggested, which is look at these different thoughts, look at these different perspectives and see what sort of it's doing in my mind and my body. Because for 4 months, I've just been coping, watching YouTube videos, eating food. I'm just aching and I look at the course for a second. I'm like, oh, I can't deal. And so your reminder has given me a little nudge to where I'm like, hold on a second. And I never realized that until right now. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, it's like New Jerusalem.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Nika, would you like to add?
I'm really glad that my words are having resonance with people, because this is my first time on here, and I thought it was at noon Eastern time, so I got on at noon and realized you have to wait 3 hours, and I thought, okay, I'll burn up 3 hours somehow. But then I set the alarm and I actually got on, but I was afraid I would miss it. I'm glad I've been doing a lot of dedicated work, because I decided that to give the course a chance to actually agree with the course instead of trying to agree with myself or create my own rules, which it keeps telling you, don't follow your own ego. There is a plan. I keep being reminded, several things come back to me, which is the issue comes with the answer always, always. So whatever you're feeling, however you're feeling, there's an answer. You are just not seeing it. It's just not there. You're not acknowledging it. You're not letting it in. You're not. And as you said, if you get pulled out of it and then you jump back in and you sort of feel like everything is chaos, you really do have to hone your instead of distracting yourself, which is with pain, it's an automatic, I'm just going to distract myself until the pain goes away. That's not what happens. You distract yourself for a few minutes, and then you have taken that time out of the time you could have allotted towards directly looking at it and saying, what does this mean? I mean, you can always end up saying, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with looking at it anymore. Now I'm going to distract myself. That I always find that's okay. But I always want to first go, okay, how much, I'll even type in words to the course and find out what pops up on the app on the phone. Or I'll just go through the support group and ask a question, type in a question, see what people say. But always find my first inclination, if I have any energy whatsoever, is to actually see if there's something I can say, something I can do, something that I can read, that I can ponder over and over, instead of distracting myself with things to keep me away from focusing on my responsibility. I am with God. I look at things to bring me back to, you're somehow doing this. It's not that you want to, it's that it's some sort of habit. It's become a habit with you. And to get out of pain permanently, you need to reverse and exchange all the bad habits with new ones that you pull up from coursework or from things that have been working, that keep you connected to the group or to God or to spirituality, but to just stay connected. I guess fortunately, I've never questioned that I'm part of God, but I think that my question was always, but how much part of God am I? Like, can I really just have everything I want and have no pain? And there's some part of me deep down inside, raised by a Marine, saying, nope, you got to feel some pain because pain is part of life. And I'm thinking, oh my God, don't do that. No, pain is what you've been taught. Pain is not necessarily part of life. You don't have to sacrifice yourself or your body, or, it's calmness, or it's steady gait, or it's joining with God. You don't have to sacrifice that to then be awarded, a life in some future date without pain. You actually have to work on it now.
Thank you for that, Megan. Derek, real quickly.
Thank you. That was super helpful. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Ardith, and then Susan.
Yeah, everybody said everything that's got some really gold in it, but here's a perspective from somebody, myself, who has not experienced a great deal of pain in her life and all of a sudden finds the opposite happening. And so I think, and I will take a little gems from what everybody said here, but one thing I'm finding is that what comes in the manual for teachers, and I'm not a scholar, super scholar of the course, so I cannot know exactly what the space is, but it does indicate to us very clearly that as we get closer and closer to having more and more of the blocks removed to that awareness of love's presence, that's when the egoic action really gets going. And it finds a way, I'm not speaking as an entity, obviously, as a wrong mind, but it finds a way to take whatever is going on immediately, or fairly immediately, and almost put an exclamation point on it and saying, oh, well, okay, you're this far, and I can see now if I don't do this, you're going to be okay. I'm putting it very bluntly, but that's exactly what I found has happened, because I ended up the last 6 months doing a life review at age 76. I felt it was necessary for me to do that and to make sure that I had cleared the decks of grievances or anything like that with anyone I can remember in my entire life, and it was wonderful. And the clear feeling I had, and all bringing me in totally new ideas and thoughts about life and myself and the course. And I was just at that point where things were really going along. It was marvelous. And that's when, bang, that's when something happened. And now I know that this is, and I can take what has been said already about looking at what's going on and looking at your thoughts and what you're doing right then and there. And now I've got a space where I can look at this and say, this is a culmination of things. And this is, let me be very careful and watch my thoughts like a hawk, as Lisa Natoli is very fond of saying. And it really, there's no question it helps. Because pain, I've decided, is really only a different feeling. We're so used to not having that particular feeling that it's terrible. But if we didn't have that, it's terrible reaction all the time, it would lessen and lessen and lessen in itself. And we would just look at it as an alternative way of feeling until finally, with all the other work we would be doing with the Holy Spirit, it does go. I've heard people who said that, and their testimony has been magnificent. You don't have to sit in this because it's not for you. It is not real. But you can't just do the words. You've got to let yourself really dive in and prove it to yourself. And if you do, God doesn't disappoint. That's all I have to say. Does not disappoint. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ardith. Megan, would you like to respond?
I heard what you're saying. There's one thing that I have to say about the course itself, like the workbook, and even the manual for teachers, and even the not the textbook so much, but the workbook, is that sometimes you can find the workbook drilling into you what your problems are, because it's actually telling you have this problem. Basically, it's giving you all the different variations of the problem. Sometimes you convince yourself you still have the problem when you actually solve the problem. So sometimes when the text is telling you your ego gets in here, you can choose to accept that the book is right and that the ego's going to keep coming and slamming back in. Or you can choose to say, right now, no, the ego is not involved in what you're saying. I can understand, but I'm not agreeing to it. I agree that it happens. I agree that it has happened to me. I agree it can happen to me in the future or at any time, but it's not happening right now. And I feel that that's really important to recognize when the book is trying to teach you something and you are actively saying, but that's not where I am now. Right now, I am actually quite solid in the book, and the book is almost giving me doubts. And I don't think it was meant that way, but sometimes when you do the course and then you redo the course and you get really into it, you can actually pull out doubts and from some of the wording. Also, I think what you said about not
you before you see 1, 2, and I found.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was talking about, so illness sometimes, it doesn't have to be
connected you before you see 1, 2, and I found.
There's some interference here. What's
Hold on,
happening?
just a second. Okay, is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Everybody's muted.
Okay, somehow I had the wires crossed. I think I'm losing a little bit of my thought, but I think the big thing was that at times, if you don't have a lot of pain to work with, there's an awful lot of other things that you can work with in similar manner that allow you to think, I am not happy in this moment, or I am not this at this moment. And those are all good things also to say, what am I thinking? What am I doing? How am I approaching this? And how can I approach it differently? Because they're all nice ways of finding those moments to say, how do I take responsibility? How do I join with God and allow myself to enjoy life and enjoy all I can of life, and be gracious with myself, be forgiving to myself, be forgiving with others, so that whatever I'm going through lessens or helps me feel stronger in the material, in my connection with God.
Thank you, Megan. Susan, it's your turn.
Phew, this is a great conversation. Megan, it's so nice to meet you. And I raised my hand so long ago, I have no idea what I was going to say, but I do have something I want to say. So we'll go with that instead. How's that? In the context of body pains and sicknesses, and I have experienced profound pain, like where I actually felt like if I was a horse, they would have shot me and put me down. And I learned from that experience to think of pain and illness as like ego, like check out of that hotel, just check out. You do not want to be staying there. And it's like ego hotel sucks. It just, and if you figure out a way to kind of check out of that hotel, your spirit, you can rise up separate from and look down on that thing that is experiencing ego hotel hell, the pain and the suffering. And I love how the Course talks about we are not the body, because when one is faced with, I have a chronic condition, when one is faced with pain and suffering, whatever form that might be, it's really nice to put perspective on it, that it doesn't matter what version that or iteration of problem the ego throws your way. It just doesn't, it's all the same issue, right? Even though it doesn't feel like that when you're in the grips of being tightly ensconced in the habit of being within the body and in the ego hotel, you know, because that's our habit, that's our pattern that we've learned from birth, to be in that hotel. And to be liberated and realize, oh no, there's an elevator I can take up that leaves this hotel and I can go high and look down on that stuff, can be a real lifesaver. And I find that by doing that, it increases the ability to spend more time, more aware, more quickly of habitual responses and reactions that happen so quickly, they pull us into that, back into that hotel, right? So with practice, and anyone with ongoing situations gets a lot of practice, right? As you were saying, keep trying new things, keep trying new ideas, see what works. I think with practice, it does get easier to take that elevator up and have compassion for helping others learn how to do that too, because we can all liberate ourselves from that particular toy that the ego plays with to torture us. You know, like that whole getting closer. Well, sure, you know, what is it? The line in the Course is about, at first the ego is always suspicious, but the closer you get, then it becomes vicious. And I love that, from suspicious to vicious, that cycle of they're figuring it out. Quick. Let's make them really sick. Let's make them really hurt, whatever. And we can manage that by checking out of that blankety blank hotel. So that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Susan. Megan, would you like?
I really appreciate the checking out of the hotel. One thing that she mentioned that sparked something in the Course, I can't remember where it said, but it became a mantra for about a week, was that how we cherish things that are bad for us. We have like a bank of things we hate. So like it could be politics, or a friend does this, or this annoys you. And instead of actually working them out, we cherish them as little go-tos for our ego to say, well, I'm not part of God because right now I want to be angry about this. I like the idea that we cherish this maladaptive behavior because it's so right for when we want to say no, but the ego's in charge. And this is when it's going to take charge, is this is where I get to put my energy. And I realize that by holding on to some of these cherished bad ideas or bad things, or just maladaptive behaviors or maladaptive thoughts or angry thoughts or whatever, by allowing them freedom, by forgiving them and saying, I don't care. I don't care. Who cares? Like, it has nothing to do with me. It doesn't. But I was going, wow, I have like a whole little shed of things that I can go to that bring me back down to hating the world and being stuck in the world and then feeling pain from the world. Because once you get stuck in the hotel, as you were saying, you have all these nice little shelves full of all these nitnoids that you don't like, that you can then point to why the world isn't working for you and why the Course doesn't work either. But that's my response. But Susan, thank you so much. That's great.
Thank you. Derek, and then Peter and Robert.
My hand's down. Go ahead, Peter.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I really appreciate the discussion. This has been an ongoing theme for the last few weeks. And again, as Maggie pointed out, today's lesson 136 is so apropos and raises so many issues for me personally. And, you know, just looking at this idea that sickness is a defense against the truth. And, you know, what makes sickness a problem? Well, it's usually the pain or the infirmity that goes along with the sickness. And so this is all part, for me, you know, today's lesson says some horrible things. It says sickness is not an accident. It says sickness is a decision. It's not a thing that happens to you quite unsought. I could read the whole lesson, but it's kind of hitting home that at some level I'm choosing this experience. And I'm reminded that the Course says, the world was made as an attack on God. And what better way to attack God than to kill his son, which happens to be me, but do it slowly and painfully with lots of suffering and lots of misery and lots of finger pointing that it's everybody else's fault that I feel the way I feel. So this just kind of builds the case that, that the world is, that I'm here against my will, that I would have never chosen this. How could this is happening to me, not through me. This is just all part of the grand illusion. And for me, it comes down to two things. Number one, can I forgive myself for all that crap? Because once I read the Course and it says I'm doing this to myself, then it's like, oh, I must really be messed up, and I really want to beat myself up for that. And then it's just to accept that there might be another way, that there might be a better way. But that means giving up my identity as a unique, autonomous. Remember, the whole goal is ego autonomy. And until I'm really willing to give that up, I can't embrace any of this other stuff that says I am as God created me. If God is real, there is no pain. I cannot suffer. I'm God's son. I cannot suffer. So I have to be ready, or at least willing to let go of all that other stuff to be able to step into the light, But stepping into the light means giving up this sense of individuality, this sense of being a victim of the world and taking responsibility, being responsible, which is not the same as blame. And then, really being willing to live the way the Course suggests, which is to see myself and my brother as one, to see no separation. And I get all this intellectually, but I'm not quite there yet. And so, I'm going to keep showing up for the Zooms that we do together. And actually, I have the Course going 24/7. I listen to the audiobook, instead of the radio or the TV, the audiobook is going. And it's taking a lot to undo that thinking, to undo that worldview. And that's the good news, because without all of this, I don't know where I would be right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for adding all that. Very valuable. Robert, would you like to share?
Yes, I would. But I must say, it's been a wonderful discussion. And very seldom do I experience a group where I feel like, oh, I could just sit here and listen. I don't need to say anything. Because I like everything Megan said, and Susan and Peter. That was just wonderful. Just wonderful, an overall grasp of the entire conceptuality of the Course. So I think just what I want to offer is a little bit thing that I go through doing what Susan might call a checking out of the hotel. And that is when I experience something or even think of something that I might experience, like, oh, my wife's going on a trip. Gee, what if she gets in an accident or something like that, or just anything. And there's a thing in the Course that you probably all recognize this, so I'll just say what I do. You probably recognize it's in the Course. I say, well, I have no need for this. I have no need for that. I have no use for that. Or if I'm experiencing a thing, I have no use for it. And then it's like, well, everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for, so I better consider that. I have no use for that. What use would I have for this? Maybe I do have a use for this, and I have to look at that. And it might turn out that that's part of me maintaining the self I made, as Peter was getting into, rather than thinking, well, you know, I'm willing to give up this identity, this limited, separated self in a body, where none of this would be part of my experience, either as a thought or as a direct physical bodily experience. And then it's like, oh, okay, this alternative self. Then the metaphysics starts coming into me. Well, what is it? What is this other self that God created me as, like himself? And so then all of a sudden, all the ideas that have to do with what God is starts coming up, because that's what I supposedly am. He created me perfect like himself. So, and that's the alternative self to the one I made that is experiencing all these things that I supposedly have no need for. So I think that brings us into the whole thing about it takes a long time to learn this course, because there's really so much to it in a way, even though we can say it's simple in some ways and it's difficult in other ways. But it's always that, okay, am I willing to give up the self I made to be the self God created me as? And getting down to that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for adding that. Peter, would you like to respond?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, then it's Ardith and then Megan.
One thing. I'm gonna say something probably quite radical and in contradiction to what was just said. I'm sorry, but it's very strongly coming up. I am going to stop saying the course is hard to learn, and the reason I'm going to stop saying is that there's a lot of people who are over the age of 30, in years we know do not exist, but who are finding themselves in a stage of life that looks at things very differently. And I think that if they were to come to the course, and I know some who have quite late, they can become extremely discouraged, thinking that, oh my God, all these pages and how am I going to do this? And so what I try to do is, wherever I can, share my little kind of a shorthand way to look at the course. It doesn't mean to dismiss all the richness that's there, because if you have the time and you have the inclination and you have the spiritual direction, by all means, dive in. But if you don't, or don't seem to think that is another way that the ego can eat at you. Oh, don't do this because it's going to take you forever. You might just as well give it up now. Save yourself. No, I'm not listening to that, because that's the voice I don't want to hear at all. At all. And the second thing is, I think, to me, the two things that set us up to really what we need to look at when we're talking particularly about sickness and healing. And again, it doesn't have to be physical, although that's the most primary one because it's so up in your face. And that's those short sentences on page 448, which people, when they encounter it, they just practically collapse and close the book, about I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience, and I decide upon the goal I would achieve, and everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. Now, if we accept that, then we have to go with the Holy Spirit and start our work. Be real serious about it. Don't do anything, but be guided into what we need to do next to see how have I asked for it? Where did this come from? And how is this being misused by that part of my mind that I am not aligned with? And then take steps, gentle steps, but take those steps, which are in the course, in the lessons, and elsewhere, particularly clarification of terms. And it boils down for me to the very end, which I love because I think Maggie starts a lot of the different recordings with this particular prayer. Or if it wasn't Maggie, whoever does. It's a lot. It's on page 28. It's said very often about I am here only to be truly helpful. And the very last line of that being, I will be healed. I will, as I let him teach me to heal. And I think all these lessons that we're doing together, all these sharings that we're doing together is part of that whole thing. And let us kind of absorb that into ourselves and as broadly as we can, rather than narrowing it down, unless we're getting direct inner guidance which tells us, take this point, this is for you. But this is the importance of our sharing this walk together. It's so important, and I am so grateful for a group like this and others I encounter who are dealing with this particular issue right now. And I don't think it's a mistake. It's come up at the same time as, for instance, Lesson 136.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ardith. From your heart straight to mine and to the hearts of everybody here. Megan, the last word for you, and then we'll close. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm talking a lot. That was really wonderful. I have to say that was wonderful. There were just a couple of notes that a lot of people talk about the ego. That we sort of have to stop the ego totally, and sometimes we forget that there are parts in our ego that are God, and that we have to recognize that just because we're trying to like get rid of ego and attach to God doesn't mean that we can't be joyous with our like show joy. Like, we are humans, so we are individuals. We are not like just pieces on a chessboard that, you know, have different or all pawns. We all have individual ways of talking, teaching, hearing, listening. And since we're all teachers and students at the same time, I think we also need to understand that we were created uniquely. And so how we uniquely celebrate life and joy and share about, love, forgiveness, and joy in life, that's those things that people also feel at the same time through our understanding of that we are with God. The more we can forgive and show joy and in our own ways, the more we can actually show our individual ways, not necessarily ego, but our individuality in God. And I'm remembering some part of the course, and I can't remember exactly where it is, but it basically said, how many people need to, how many does it take to become part of God? And the answer, I don't think I'm saying it right. The answer is one. Not the answer meant that everybody who attains the once everybody on the earth attains the ability to be with God permanently, they've all moved up. We will be a one. We will not be a whole bunch of separate things. We will be one. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that so I didn't forget it. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, I would like to ask you all to become quiet inside. And I'll read a prayer that is taken from chapter 31, section 8, paragraph 4. The images we make cannot prevail against what God himself would have us be. Let us never be fearful of temptation, but see it as it is, another chance to choose again, and let Christ's strength prevail in every circumstance and every place we raise an image of ourselves before. For what appears to hide the face of Christ is powerless before his majesty and disappears before his holy sight. The saviors of the world who see like him are merely those who choose his strength instead of their own weakness, seen apart from him. They will redeem the world, for they are joined in all the power of the will of God. Amen. Thank you all for being here and for your participation.
Thank you all.